Morning, Andre. Welcome. Thanks for
Sean,
joining. So today's topic is performance enhancing drugs. Let's start off. Is there any good reason one would ever use those?
Sean, I would be quite hesitant and careful to either condone or condemn the use of performance-enhancing drugs. And for a better word, I'm going to refer to steroids when I talk about performance-enhancing drugs. So, like with everything in life, there's context to it. And I think a decision whether to take or not to take steroids would depend on the context as well as risk-benefit analysis. And what I mean by that is that there's no doubt that anabolic steroids, they are pharmacological agents, it's drugs. And like with any drug, there are benefits and there are side effects, and sometimes potentially harmful side effects. You can think of any drug, even an aspirin, if you actually read the insert that comes with the medication, you'll see how many side effects there are. And the same goes for steroids. So it's medication, it's got potentially harmful side effects. One needs to weigh up the risks against the benefits and then make your own personal decision around that and take accountability for your decision.
I think maybe one question would be, would you ever be able to be Mr. Olympia without using them or naturally?
The short answer is no. I think we must be realistic. And the reason for me saying that is if you look at the Mr. Olympia contenders, for starters, they all have superior genetics and excellent work ethic. If you just look at Ronnie Coleman, at early pictures before he started using steroids, he was already jacked. He was already a very jacked person, a very muscular person, owing to his superior genetics. So all the guys on that stage have got superior genetics, and adding the drugs is like the icing on the cake. It just makes an excellent physique, a superhuman physique. It takes them to that next level. So if you use your logic, even with very good genetics, if you want to step on that stage, if you do not take those enhancements, you've got no chance. So the short answer is no. So within that context, if your goal is to become Mr. Olympia, you need to accept the fact that using steroids will be part of your regime.
So do these guys go about it in a safe way? Is there a safe way that they go about this?
I think if we think about that, there's always a more sensible way of approaching things, and I think the answer is yes. There's a reckless way of using performance-enhancing drugs, and then there would be possibly a more sensible way. The one thing I can think of would be to work with a very experienced coach and physician. You need to take regular blood work. You need to monitor your health markers, and you need a knowledgeable person to actually help you with that so that you can detect that something is going wrong in your system and you can take mitigating steps. It would be quite foolish just to take these drugs without monitoring, without knowing what they're doing to your system, and just hoping for the best. That doesn't sound like a good strategy to me. The other thing, obviously, is the quality of the drugs that you are using. If you blindly go onto the internet and order online from a source that you're not familiar with, you're taking basically your life into your own hands. You don't know what you're going to get. For starters, you're not guaranteed of the potency of that drug, and you're even not sure that you're getting the drug that you ordered. The drugs that you order and that you receive may contain contaminants that are harmful to your body. You're not sure in which environment they were created. So it is really a bit of a risk you're taking there. So to take good quality drugs from reputable sources that you're familiar with, that seems to be a good way to go and a much more sensible way in using it.
Okay, and I think looking at myself, definitely the genetics are not there for being Mr. Olympia. So it's more of a personal thing. I think a lot of guys just want to look better and feel better. In my opinion, I have trained with people that do use those kind of drugs, and I have seen them grow a better physique. Strength-wise, I didn't see much. In my opinion, I was at times even stronger with my skinny looks. One thing that did happen is when I met up with Kevin, I realized something else, that your way of training already there, you can spend a lot of time by having the correct form and the correct coach, and that already can make a huge difference just on a personal level, to feel good and feel better and be stronger than just the norm. Not knowing, for instance, we also know about heat training. Old Kevin, the late Kevin, also taught us the heat training, how to properly train. And definitely I can say on that level, you might think you know what heavy duty training is until you met up with somebody like Kevin. And we all know Kevin was a natural bodybuilder. He didn't win Mr. Universe or Olympia, but he definitely had many titles in South Africa. And I think his way of training already made a huge difference. Understanding how to reach failure and the proper form and way of training and the correct sequence of those exercises for supersetting and whatever. So I think that, in my personal opinion, made a huge difference to me. So definitely I'm not somebody that would be looking at performance enhancing drugs or steroids. What's your feeling on that? Do you think if you up your intensity, how much would still be left maybe for these drugs to take a bit better effect as well?
A few ideas come to mind, a few comments come to mind listening to you. I think, for starters, there are a few principles we need to, I think, accept. Anabolic steroids or PEDs in general will increase the strength and the muscle mass of most people. But like with anything in life, genetics play a huge role. Genetics also within the context of how your body responds to drugs. So if you take two people and give them the same drug at the same dosage, their response may vary and may differ. On the one hand, you may get a hyper responder, a person who responds very favorably to that drug. And you also may get a hypo responder, a person that responds very poorly to that, and anything in between. But I think it is safe to say that most people who use these drugs will experience increase in strength and in muscle mass. In my experience through the years training in gym and training with people who use it and who don't use it, who are on gear or not on gear, there is definitely, with a large percentage of people, a huge improvement. There's no doubt. The other comment I want to make is we always need to compare apples with apples. So if we talk about the benefits of these drugs, we need to assume that we compare people with similar genetics, with good genetics for bodybuilding in this case. B, that they use the optimal training strategy for them, a personalized training strategy that works for them, whether that be high volume, low volume, heat, whatever, the Mike Mensa principles. But we need to assume that they train in an optimal way. And then obviously that their nutrition is at an optimal level as well. And then if you add the drugs to that, that again is, like I said earlier, the icing on top of the cake, that just gives them that raise to the next level. But we need to assume that people at this level, and we're talking about at the Mr. Olympia level, at a competitive level, they check the boxes in terms of training style, training effectiveness, nutrition, and then they add the drugs on top of that. That said, another concept that I think we need to just talk about is that I did say that drugs would improve strength and muscle mass in most people, but you cannot take a person who's got the genetics for long distance endurance racing and let them use drugs and think they're going to turn into a Mr. Olympia. It doesn't work like that because they do not have the underlying genetics for that. So even though they may improve from their own personal baseline, it's not going to transform them into a Mr. Olympia. Obviously, they'll have to change their training style. But let's say we take an endurance athlete, a long distance athlete, with that type of genetics. We let them weight train, resistance training, for a period of time with the proper nutrition and with the drugs. They certainly will improve from their own baseline. So they will become stronger. They will add muscle mass to a larger or lesser extent. But if their genetics are more geared towards endurance training, they will never reach the Mr. Olympia stage. And I think that's something we need to accept.
Okay, and then something else I'm thinking now in these lines or along these lines is, for instance, if you take a car, you might have an 1100 engine or a 4-liter V8. So that's maybe where the genetic difference comes to play. Are you born small and weak, or are you born big and strong? Now also taking, for instance, let's say a 2-liter engine and just adding a turbo onto that engine, surely you are prone to damaging that engine because you're not looking at hardening the other components, adding better brakes, for instance. So in terms of our bodies, aren't there any risks involved as well when it comes to these drugs, that you might be over extending your body and become prone to injury, for instance?
Definitely, Sean. I think again, and we're talking about bodybuilding and competition level bodybuilding in this case specifically. Bodybuilding is an extreme sport. You are pushing your body beyond its boundaries, beyond its design parameters, so to speak. And with that comes risk. There's no doubt, but there is no extreme sport where people are not prepared to take risk. And that's where I said in the beginning, it comes down to a risk-benefit analysis. If a person's passion and desire, your goal is to become the biggest, strongest person on the face of the earth, you want to be the Mr. Olympia, it will take whatever you can throw at it. I mean, you need to check all the boxes. Again, optimal training, optimal nutrition, and then whatever enhancement you can do with it. That is what is required from you. And that means pushing your body at all levels to the absolute extreme. And that's why people love watching it and going to shows, because they want to see these mass monsters. They want to see something out of the ordinary. But with that, again, comes risk. And that's why I always maintain, if that is your goal, you need to make an informed decision. You need to know what you are letting yourself in for, what are the requirements of that sport, what are the risks that you are taking, and in this case, health risks you are taking. You need to know that, and you need to take that informed decision that you are willing to take that risks, try it and have risk mitigation strategies in place, like we already discussed, and then go for it. And my advice is always then, if that is your decision, I respect that decision. I'm not criticizing that, because that is the right decision for you. And you cannot blame anybody afterwards if, for example, you've got down the line long-term health consequences. It's a decision that you took, like with any decision in your life. But if you use your appearance and your body, in this case, to build a career, to earn money, in this case, I think the use of drugs may be warranted, and in this case is actually required. But again, it's a decision that you then take. But my opinion on this is, then go for it. Go hard, win your titles, make your money, and get off the gear at some stage and start focusing on your health and your longevity.
Interesting that you should mention get off. That maybe poses another question. How easily would you be able to get off that? Are you going to be a kind of a person that are going to become addicted to the way you look and feel? And, it might be a danger of overdosing. Maybe you think, little bit more, put even more. Is there any danger in that? Don't you foresee any dangers in that as well? Once you start something, you might find yourself being the kind of person that just doesn't want to ever let go and never go off the gear. And that's maybe where also it becomes slightly more dangerous.
You're asking all the difficult questions, Sean. Yes, there's no doubt around that. There are those type of risks as well. It's well known and well documented that the use of steroids, for example, may lead you to using other drugs and harder drugs as part of the total regime. And there's no doubt that that opens that risk to that. But I think, again, it comes down to the individual. I think there are people who can use these substances in a safer way. They use it for a specific goal, and they are able then to taper it down and eventually try and at least lower the dosages. But there's always a bit of nuance to it. If you stay, for example, on testosterone for too long, what happens is your body stops making its own endogenous levels of testosterone because you are actually injecting that into your body. So your body stops making its own supply of testosterone. And in many cases, you will never be able to get off the drugs completely. You may have to be on TRT, testosterone replacement therapy, for the rest of your life. There are other risks as well. It can lead to infertility. There are many young bodybuilders that come to the stage in their lives that they want to have children, and then it's not possible anymore. They've lost that ability. That is a serious risk. Again, it's something, that's why you need to work with a provider that can actually monitor your blood work and try and mitigate these type of risks. But they are there. There's absolutely no doubt around that. I think there's another psychological aspect to it, and I think we can think about it, and it makes a lot of sense. Once you've gained a lot of size and strength, psychologically, it means a lot to you because it improves your self-confidence, your whole body image, and then to drop drugs and to go cold turkey and to lose a lot of size and strength psychologically to many people is a huge blow. So that becomes very difficult. If you were used to weighing maybe 120 kgs, 260 to 80 pounds, and you stop drugs and you change your whole training regime and you have a drastic drop in muscle mass. Say you drop from 120 kgs to 100 or 90, you are much, much smaller, much smaller. And for many people, that is not acceptable. And then I agree with you. There are many people that will find it very, very difficult to let go because letting go of the drugs also means that you become smaller. And that is so, yeah, I think you are right. It's very difficult for many people to come off these drugs. That said, on the other hand, I have listened to many competitive level bodybuilders who were able to successfully transition into a more quote unquote normal life in terms of cutting down on the steroids and eventually getting to very, very low maintenance levels of testosterone if they have to do that for the rest of their lives. But they were willing to do that, and they could also psychologically transition to become used to a smaller body.
Okay. In terms of mood swings or mood changes, is that something that happens? Maybe people become more or less aggressive, and that could impact family life or relationships with friends, family, spouses. Is there any effect on mood people experience?
Again, the answer is yes, absolutely. I mean, it's a topic that you often hear people talk about, the so-called roid rage. And again, we are working with humans here. It is individual. So it's not to say everybody who uses steroids will become these monsters, aggressive monsters, not at all. But if you normally, your normal tendencies are that you are a very aggressive person by nature, even without steroids, chances are, if you add some of these substances into the mix, that you may become more aggressive. The same holds true for use of alcohol. It's the same if you look at alcohol. If you're normally a kind, loving person, and you abuse alcohol, it's not to say that you're going to become aggressive, but we do know that some people do become aggressive when they use alcohol. So it's again a very personal thing, and it depends on your personal makeup, and it can make you more aggressive. There's no doubt.
So probably it could also destroy your life in other ways, like alcohol, for instance, if you are susceptible to that kind of.
Absolutely. Again, I think my guidelines for the safer use of these substances would be to work with professionals, people who know what the potential pitfalls are, to look out for them, to assist you. But again, if you do it on your own, if you buy stuff off the internet, you don't know the source of it, you don't work with professionals, you don't do blood work, you haven't got any psychological support in your life, if you do it blindly, you are taking huge risks because you are not sure how it's going to work out for you.
Okay, thank you very much, Andre. I think that was quite informative. In summary, I think I still prefer the natural way of going about things, in my opinion, for every day, just being the better or best version of myself. And yeah, thanks. That was quite interesting and insightful.
It's a pleasure, Sean, but then I also take it I will not be seeing you on the Mr. Olympia stage anytime soon.
No, definitely not. Thanks also to our viewers for joining. If you have any comments or questions, maybe just put them in the comments there. And remember to subscribe if you find this information useful.
Thank you, Sean.